Good morning. If you would, for our lesson this morning, grab your Bibles and open up to the book of 1 Kings in chapter 6. Today I want to talk about our worship in God's temple today. I've had the privilege and the opportunity to travel several different times throughout my life to different cities and towns across several different states and visit with other congregations. I've also had the opportunity to visit with our brethren within other churches. One of the things that always intrigues me, always surprises me as I go and visit other places, is the buildings, the churches themselves, the outside of the building that we worship in, the inside. It amazes me how beautiful churches and these buildings can be. We think about the church as a building a lot, don't we? And we know that that's not necessarily true. It's not about the building. It's not about how beautiful it is. It's about the people that are gathered inside. But we do look around and we see the flowers that the ladies prepared for us. We see the beautiful paintings that are in the baptistries behind us most of the time. We see beautiful chandeliers and archways and brickwork. We see all of these things and we're so impressed with it. There's so much more for us to grasp as we think about our worship to God, as we, the church, are worshiping our God in His temple today. I want us to go through 1 Kings, and I want our focus to not be upon the temple itself, but I want us to think about what the temple meant. What does it mean to us today? I want us to think if maybe there's some attitudes or some behaviors, something that we can learn from this text in 1 Kings chapter 6 and apply it to our lives as we think about worshiping and serving our God. Now, if we think about this text, I also want us to realize that the temple was the very center of Jewish life. The Jews of the dispersion were expected to travel to Jerusalem each and every year visiting the temple. The tabernacle and the wilderness wanderings, it was the core, the essence. It was where God met and dwelt right there in their midst. They knew that they could go and they could worship their God and do it proudly. God was put right in the middle of His people, right where He wanted to be. But go with me now into our text. I want us to read 1 Kings chapter 6, and I want us to look at verses 12 all the way down through verse 38. Concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to your father David. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people of Israel. So Solomon built the temple and finished it. And he had built the inside walls of the temple with cedar boards. From floor to the temple to the ceiling of the temple, he paneled the inside of wood. And he covered the floor of the temple with planks of cypress. Then he built a 20-cubit room at the rear of the temple, from floor to ceiling with cedar boards. He built it inside as the inner sanctuary, as the most holy place. And in front of the temple sanctuary, being 40 cubits long, the inside of the temple was cedar, carved with ornamental buds and open flowers, all with cedar. There was no stone to be seen. And he prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. He overlaid it with pure gold and overlaid the altar also of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the inside of the temple with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. The whole temple he overlaid with gold until he had finished all the temple. Also he overlaid with gold this entire altar that was in the inner sanctuary. Inside the inner sanctuary he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the cherub was 5 cubits, and the other wing of the cherub 5 cubits, 10 cubits from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both cherubim were of the same size and of the same shape. Also he overlaid the cherubim with gold. Their wings touched across the room from the middle. And he overlaid them with gold. He carved all the walls of the temple all around them, both the inner and the outer sanctuaries. with carved figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. And the floor of the temple he overlaid with gold, both the inner and the outer sanctuaries. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary he made doors of olive wood. The lintel and the doorpost were 1/5 of the wall. The 2 doors were of olive wood also, and he carved them the figures of the cherubim, the palm trees, and the open flowers, and then he overlaid these with gold. And he spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. So the door of the sanctuary he also made doorposts of olive wood, 1/4 of the wall. And the 2 doors were of cypress. 2 panels comprised one folding door, and 2 panels comprised the other folding door. And then he carved the cherubim, the palm trees, and the open flowers upon them, and overlaid them with gold, and applied evenly upon all of the carved works. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone, and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its detail, and according to all its plan. So he was 7 years total in building. As we think about this text, we hear so much detail in this temple. We hear how it was overlaid with gold, how it was intricately carved, how well it was put into place, all the wood, fine wood, strong wood that was used to build this wonderful temple. We're told that it took 7 years to build this temple, and it had to be such a magnificent structure. I'm sure it was beautiful to be seen, covered with cedar and fir, carved and beautiful by hand, laid with gold, all of the fixtures huge and tall. But what can we really learn about this place? Yes, it was probably a very beautiful place. Yes, it was probably something to step back and really see, something to be proud of. These people were proud of it because it was the house of God. But what does this really say to us today? What are some things that we can learn from this? This place that they had built for God to live and worship. A place of service and adoration, a place where they could praise their God and have reverence for their God. What can we learn in this text? I want us to think about the symbols within that text. As I was studying through this book, there was a lot of things that really popped out at me. A lot of things that really stood out that had to have importance. First, I want us to think about the cherubim. One of the carvings that was mentioned more than once was the cherubim. It represents God's expectation of us to worship Him. It's all about our worship and our service to our God. We don't know a lot about cherubim except for the fact that they are winged angelic-like structures, heavenly beings whose function seems to be all about worshiping and glorifying God. And you'll notice that throughout all of the text, the cherubim were always mentioned first. Always mentioned first. Again, when something is repeated more than once, there's got to be importance to it. The main cherubim were 2 freestanding statues, and they were tall, placed within the most holy place. They had prominence, they had power, they had a place right in the front. We're told that each statue was about 10 cubit high and 10 cubit across, total from wing to wing. That would be about 15 foot to 15 foot, or somewhere between 15 to 20 foot. Because the most holy place itself was approximately a 30 by 30 by 30 room. And the 2 cherubim had to have been the most prominent feature in that room. Their wings were said to have touched from wall to wall. It filled the place. Their wings touched in the middle of the room. So big and so massive. And it was right under the middle of their touching wings, right in the center of the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant sat. Think about the importance here. The first and foremost primary function of these angelic-like creatures was to worship and glorify and to honor God. I believe that that speaks to us, or it should speak to us in some way, of the fact that the most prominent, the most center, foremost priority of function in our life in the church and in our assemblies is to worship and glorify and praise our God. That's why we're here. And I hate to break it to us because I know this is the way that we think, but life in this world is not about us. It's about God, and it's about our worship and our service to Him. That's our primary function in life, to glorify our God. Solomon, in all of his wisdom, he concluded it is the whole duty of man to fear God and keep His commandments. When one walked into the temple, as they entered through those big, huge doors that were over a quarter of the height of the whole wall, they could not miss the fact that this was God's house, because of those massive cherubim sitting in the front of the room. This is where God can be worshipped, and this is where God can be served. When people walk into our assemblies, here's the question for us. When they walk in and they gather with us, do they witness our daily lives, or do they witness us worshiping and serving and praising our God? Do they see God as our first priority? Is that what they see as they come and they gather together with us? When someone walks into our assemblies, when they walk into our life, whether it be here in this building or out in our world, when they see us for the first time, can they see, or do they see God? Or is it again just all about us? Do they see everything else about us? Oh, I've got to get my kids to soccer. Oh, I've got to be the center of attention. Oh, I've got to have so many friends. Oh, I'm on Facebook. Did you see that last tweet that I made? Are people really seeing us, or are they seeing the world in us? Are they seeing us worshiping our God and praising Him and giving thanks to Him for our children and our families and a place to worship? When one walked into the most holy place, the worship of God, it filled the room. It filled the room, and God must fill every aspect of our life. There was a reason that those cherubim touched from side to side, because it represents God filled the place. It touched every area from wall to wall and everything in between. And God was right there in the middle of His people. But do we give opportunity for God to be right in the middle of our lives? Do we give God the opportunity to fill us in every area of our life so that we can worship Him? Can we be like Paul? Paul said, when you see inside me, it's no longer me that you see, but it's Christ that's living in me. The first thing that you saw in Paul's life was Paul glorifying Christ. It was all about Jesus and Him crucified. It was no longer about himself. But you have to ask yourself, has that really happened to me? When people look at me, do they see me, Tracy, or do they see God and Christ glorified? You want to talk about New Testament evangelism? That's a topic that we want to really hear about. If we want to be evangelistic, fill yourself so full of Jesus that every time your neighbor, your friends, your family, your co-workers, your children look at you, they see Jesus. That's New Testament evangelism. That Christ is glorified and that people see Him living in you. You don't even have to say much. People see it. People want to know, where does your hope come from? How do you have so much joy? How do you always have a smile on your face? Even in hard times, how do you say that you can praise your God? They'll see it in you. So the question again becomes, are we able to truthfully say that we have crucified the old man? Or is he still visible? This is Bible. We must fill ourselves and fill our assemblies with God and give Him the prominent place that He deserves, the center of our lives, and we must worship Him. The second thing that we notice in the text is also behind the cherubim, it says that there were palm trees that were carved and overlaid with gold also. These palm trees represent our service to God, but also our service to others. Our serving God by serving others, by serving His creation, by helping others, by doing good to others. If you remember, it was palm branches that were laid before Christ upon His triumphant entry. Palm trees had a prominent place also. They had a function. As I was studying again, one of the most crazy things and most impressive things that I learned out of this study is that there was nothing at all about the palm tree that was not used in some way in Palestine. People of the Mediterranean world used every bit of it. They used the bark from the outside, they used the wood, they used the fruit, they used the oil, they used the leaves. They used every bit of the palm tree. There was nothing that was wasted. And the truth is it's still that way today. In the Philippines, still very true. They used the entire palm tree. And that's exactly what should happen with us. We're to be used up in every way fully by serving others and helping others and serving Jesus in the process. When Jesus called His disciples, as He went to each one of them, He didn't promise them, you'll have all the profits of the world, you'll have all the power, you'll have all the privilege, you'll have all the prestige, you'll be the most popular people in the world. At no time did Jesus promise His disciples that as He told them to come and follow Him. But He did promise to show them, and He carried out that promise by showing them how to serve others, how to help others, how to reach out to others, how to truthfully be fishers of men. In the great sheep and goat judgment, heaven's reward was based completely upon serving others. As you have done it to the least of these, you have also done it unto me. When you picture the saved in heaven in the book of Revelation, what do you picture? If you go back and read in Revelation, you see all of God's people worshiping Him, and they're sitting around the throne of God, and they're worshiping and they're serving. And what are they wearing? They're wearing bright white robes washed in the blood of the Lamb. And what is in their hands? What do they have? They have palm branches. Folks, we're supposed to be used in service. Every bit of us, we should be devoted to Christ and reaching others and serving and helping where we can. It's so very true that worship and service and forgiveness and salvation are all inseparably tied together. They all go hand in hand. Saved people worship God, and saved people are found serving other people. And the most amazing thing about it is that that's what helps us to find a spiritual balance. If we want to be spiritually balanced people, we must be found not only just worshiping God and saying thank you, God, and praising God, but we need to be serving others through God also. Serving those people that God puts in our lives, that He puts in our paths. There was a lady named Irma Bombeck, and she once wrote this wonderful story, this letter, and she said, when I get to the end of my week, I want my purse to be empty, I want my refrigerator to be empty, I want my gas tank to be empty, and I want my pockets to be completely empty. And somebody asked, well, why would you say that? And she concluded with the point, that's exactly how I picture judgment. That's exactly how I picture judgment day, standing before God with empty pockets and nothing left to give because I used everything that God gave me in service to others. Folks, we better adopt this mindset. God, let me be empty and let me be of service to you. May God help us to worship and serve Him, being His instruments of righteousness, being His tool to be used in service to others. So what was that third image that was on the walls? The third image that you see was the open flowers. Listed, it was the cherubim first, the palm trees next, and then the open flowers. The open flowers would represent the good life that God has given to us. The beauties of the earth, the beauty of life. The psalmist David, he wrote, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows His handiwork. How often do we really stop and pay attention to the handiwork, the beautiful creations that God has blessed us with in this life? God has given us so many things to appreciate, so many things to just stand in awe and say, God, how could you create such beauty? We should stand in awe. How can you allow the sun to rise and the sun to set with such beautiful colors? So many times we're just taking it for granted. Are we admiring it or are we just using it? Spring is upon us. Pollen is out. You see the bees starting to come out. You see the fruit trees starting to bloom out. You see the grass in my yard, mostly the weeds, starting to pop back up. You see spring, the blooming, the beautiful clover that's come back into all of our pastures and fields. And do we even notice it? Do we even stand in awe of God anymore? Do we stand and say, my God, you created all of this. You spoke it and it came into existence. My God, what an awesome and powerful God you are. Yes, the heavens declare His glory. This earth shows all of His handiwork. It shows all of the things that He is able to do. And the thing is He's commissioned us and called us to be good stewards of those things. It amazes me how many people, when we go to restaurants and we're out and about in our daily lives, how many people don't even carry on conversations with each other. They have their phones in front of them, texting and Facebooking and doing whatever it is that they do. Does it amaze us? Does it shock us? We don't even spend time with each other and appreciate the life that God has given us. You want to learn something in life, I promise you the best way to learn in life is talk to people who are dying. Go to the hospital and visit with somebody who's on hospice. They can share all kinds of life and wisdom with you because they appreciate the life that God has blessed them with, and they know not to take it for granted. Go visit with some of our cancer patients and ask them what's important to them, and I promise they won't say money and power and things. They'll say my family that's around me and the doctors that are helping me and my God who is in control. Let's not take life for granted. Yes, God calls us to worship Him in His temple, and we think about all these things, our worship to Him, our worship and service to others, and we think about the life that God has given us. Old Testament worship was very much so centered around the tabernacle and Solomon's temple here because that's where God was, right there, right between the wings of those cherubim in the room, right there in the midst of them. But this is what I want us to grasp here. God no longer dwells in the temples made with the hands of men. He dwells within each and every one of us. He dwells in you. For you are the temple of God. He has said, I will dwell in you, I will walk with you, I will be your God, and you will be my people. God is right here with each and every one of us. Don't you know that you are the temple? Don't you know that that is your place? You are the sanctuary of God, and His Spirit dwells right there in you. But you have to make a choice to let Him fill you, to fill every aspect of your life. And as He fills every aspect of your life, are you going to be found worshiping Him everywhere that you go? Are you going to allow that worship and that praise, that thanksgiving to God for all the blessings that you've been given to nudge you and push you and prompt you to serve other people? To be just like that palm tree, to be used completely. My God, send me where you want and use me however you need to use me. And as we go about doing those good things and worshiping and thanking our God, will we take notice and thank God for the life that is around us, not taking for granted any opportunity? Will we be found worshiping and serving our God in our temples today? There's so much that can be learned from this text, and I hope that we're able to apply it to our lives. The challenge of the lesson today is very much that, to worship and to serve God as His temple, as His instrument of righteousness, and as His living sacrifice. And if you examine yourself today and you find yourself not doing that, maybe you found yourself out of service, maybe you found yourself slipping further and further away, taking for granted all of the wonderful blessings that God blesses us with each and every day. Maybe it's time to open up our eyes and our hearts and make a change. The challenge for you this week, find God and let Him fill your temple. Thank you.